Hello everybody and welcome to this month's Q&A with me, myself, Michelle Brooks and the lovely Victoria Baxter. So hi Victoria, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So I think you've got a question today that both of us are going to have a little bit of input into, and we're going to have a little bit of a discussion around this, and hopefully it will help some of the viewers to see if they've got a struggle in this area. So if you go ahead and ask the question.
Yes, so my question came in from someone and it is around the concept of sugar. So the question kind of is a broad, what's the deal with sugar? Like, is it really I can't think of the word, but is it as bad as people make out? Bad for our health? And if we're looking to reduce our sugar intake, some advice and guidance on how we might go about that, especially maybe if it's someone is already consuming quite a lot in both like chocolatey forms and like your starchy carby forms. How might we go about reducing it if we want to? So, but first of all, what is the deal with sugar from a nutrition point of view?
It's one of those good old questions with nutrition. Is it bad for you? Nothing, in my opinion as a nutrition coach, nothing is bad for us. It's the amount of it that we have that can then become bad for us. Sugar, a lot of people use in the form of energy boosting. And with refined sugar especially, it's going to be that kind of hit a peak and then hit a trough. So you're going to have a high rise in energy and then a proper crash. So it's like caffeine.
Could I just ask you to define what refined sugar is necessarily?
Refined sugar is when it's been through a process of bleaching.
Oh, right.
So the kind of like stuff you get in granulated form in a packet, that's refined sugar. And refined sugar is in everything like sweets, biscuits, cakes. It's usually used in that form.
Okay.
So yeah, it's one of those. And again, like I've always spoken about things that are not good for you individually as well. Like for myself, I'm lactose intolerant. So dairy is not good for me, but it doesn't mean to say it's not good for the next person. So it depends on your actual tolerance of that sugar. But in general, I mean, I wouldn't like to state statistics or anything like that. But in general, again, sugar in its like refined form will give you the peaks and troughs. And again, with starchy carbohydrates, that does the same. It'll give you the high and then the low. What you want is a carbohydrate that will give you the steady state, the prolonged energy, not the peaks and the troughs. So is it good for you? In the sense of peaks and troughs, that is not good for anybody's health, because you're going to be either buzzing or you're going to be on an absolute flawed state of being. So I would say that, again, it's really hard because it's an individual thing, that somebody might be less or more tolerant to sugar than another, more or less tolerant to a starchy carbohydrate than another. So it's a very individual task. But if you do want to cut down because maybe you're addicted to sugar, because that's a real thing as well. I read a study a few years back that it's actually more addictive than cocaine, in that people find it so hard to get off once they've become addicted to sugar. I can't relate because I've never ever had a real sweet tooth. As I'm getting towards menopausal years, yes, my sweet tooth is increasing and I can kind of like be more inclined to crave sugary things rather than craving more savory things that I have been doing. But for me, I've never had that kind of addiction to anything kind of sugary. So I'm not talking from experience. I've only talked to other clients that this can be a problem for. And what I would say is wean yourself off very, very slowly. It's like anything that you're addicted to. You can't just come off of it, because you will have that massive crash and burn. Again, I've done this with caffeine, so I can talk from experience with caffeine, that I went straight from not having a lot of caffeine in a day to nothing. And I literally said, once I got, because I did do the whole like cold turkey, I had bad headaches. I felt so tired. I felt as if I was ill. And then after about 5 or 6 days, it started to lift. The headaches were still there a little bit, then it started to lift, and then I felt great. And I'm drinking now decaf coffee. Can't see it in my cup, but I only drink decaf now. I've never ever gone back to any caffeinated coffee because I knew that withdrawal was never ever going to happen to me again because it was so horrific.
You mentioned about headaches, actually. That's one thing. If I kind of in the past would have had maybe a period of time where I was just eating like absolute junk for a couple of weeks or so, maybe over Christmas or on holidays or something, and then I'd come back and get back on it. This is in the olden days. The headaches I used to get for those first few days, because suddenly I'm not eating that junk and I'm eating really kind of low refined sugar foods for by the end of even just the first day, by the end of the day, I'd be on a bit of a headache for a few days. And after a while, I realised I think it was going from the extreme of having quite a lot of sugary rubbish to nothing. Yeah,
Exactly.
so headaches, I can relate to that.
Wean yourself off really slowly. So if you're used to having like, I don't know, pasta for lunch, a cake in the evening, biscuits in between meals, then you're not going to just cut all of that out all at once. Keep one thing in and 2 or 3 things in, take one out, take another thing out, and then as slowly coming off. And if you still, I mean, you're going to probably answer this more than I can about the cravings, but if you are still getting like obviously sweet cravings, then swap it for things that are not containing refined sugars. So people always talk about like swapping it for fruit, but it's also got sugar in. Yes, it's got sugar in, but it's natural sugars. It's fructose, which again, in excess, if you're on a weight loss journey, too much fruit as well is gonna not make you lose weight. But it's not to say that fruit is bad for you. Fruit is amazing for you. It's got lots of nutrients in it. It's got things that are really good for our muscle, brain, you name it. Fruit has got it. It's got it all going on. But it's got natural sugar in it rather than a chemical sugar, which is completely different, and it's not going to give you the peaks and troughs that the sugar would. So fruit's a good one. Obviously, it doesn't have the same kick as if you're going to have like a chocolate biscuit or.
But you know what? Those you gave me a recipe, Michelle, for protein balls that are made up of dates and apricots and nuts, and a bit of honey and some oats.
Yes.
And then it rolled in desiccated coconut. So I guess the desiccated coconut might have a touch of refined sugar in. I don't know. Maybe I'm guessing there. Just because it feel quite processed to me. I don't know. But all in all, I've literally just had one actually 10 minutes before we got on. All in all, they're really a really nice sweet kick. Oh, I think there's a touch of cocoa powder in the whole batch though.
Yeah.
They're a really nice sweet kick. And yet all made up of these. Would you say it's a healthier option from a
absolutely. And I was gonna go on to say that there are very good recipes out there without sugar in them that would use natural sugars with the form of like honey, dried fruits, and yes, desiccated coconut. Way you could get around that, but it's a bit of a faff, is buy your own coconut and grate it. You can do that, but for ease, as long as it's not high in sugar, then there's no problem in having that little bit in that just rolled on stuff. So there's things like that. There's so many recipes out there now. I think Davina McCall did a really good recipe book that's non-sugar, sweet things for non-sugar diet. So there are many things that you can look to replace in that actual refined sugar with more of a natural thing rather than processed. And again, like I've made like desserts, chocolate mousse with avocado rather than with actual chocolate. Obviously it's not avocado gives you the chocolate to taste, you put a bit of cocoa powder in it, but again it's the avocado gives you the creaminess and the cocoa adds that little kick of chocolate, and you feel like you're having something really sweet, but it's not actually anything that sweet in there. It's just the avocado that gives it the creaminess and you feel like you're eating something chocolatey. So there are ways around it, definitely. So obviously we've talked about the way that you can swap things, but when people have those cravings, I mean, we've talked about this before, but how would you go about that with somebody who's trying to kick sugar and trying to get over those cravings?
There's a few steps really. I think I in my work do work with people who are trying to make changes and will be noticing urges for certain things at times. And if somebody really, really wants to, if it's really important to them from maybe like a health focus to try and make these changes, there's a particular technique called urge surfing that I do with people, which is about kind of noticing an urge and trying to allow an urge to be present, because actually naturally what we tend to find is that when an urge comes up, if we're trying to resist it, we kind of have to fight against it, and we kind of don't want the urge to happen. We don't want to experience it because it can be so overwhelming. So we might distract ourselves, get out the house, go for a walk, and these are all useful things, as in, I'm not against getting out and distracting yourself, and obviously there's health benefits going for a walk. However, if we only ever rely on that, then it just reinforces the idea that cravings are bad, and urges are overwhelming. So if we kind of get to know our urges and almost make friends with them and are okay with having a craving going on, and learn how to sit with one, learn to be with it and kind of breathe through it, even if it's just a case of breathing through it, identifying an urge, how it feels, kind of making it quite tangible, like thinking about where in my body I feel it, what size and shape does it feel like, is it a moving thing or is it a solid thing, kind of spending a bit of time getting to know what it feels like to have an urge, before then kind of mindfully choosing what you're going to do next. And what you might choose to do next is go out for a walk or something to take your mind off it. But the difference there being that you're developing a different relationship with cravings and urges, so that they don't have to be something to be feared. They don't have to be something that feels so overwhelming. They're something that's a natural part of life. And we also know that they're a bit like a wave, in that if they do meet resistance from you being like, oh, I hate this feeling, they're going to crash and explode. Whereas if we learn to surf that urge, they tend to dissipate like waves do. So they kind of rise, you get a peak, and then it will ease in time. They might come back again within half an hour or so, but then it will ease again. So if we can learn to surf our urges instead of resist them and give them rocks, then we're more likely to be able to successfully deal with them as they come up.
Brilliant.
That's my little 2 pence on it. But could I just ask you another nutrition type question? Coming right back to the beginning when you said, like, okay, it's not good from a blood sugar point of view. Am I right in thinking there are implications for like things like your metabolism and your insulin production if your blood sugars are going up and down like this? Does it tend to have that knock-on effect, and that can add to like fat storage and things? And
totally. An indicator of people with diabetes is that kind of like midsection bulge. And generally, not always, but generally when people have got to that point, it's been an excess of sugar or starchy carbohydrate that has caused that, for sure. I was just thinking of something when you was talking about that craving thing, that once you get these urges and waves, it's good to have those little things already there, like the date balls or something that you can just grab one of theirs, and that might just help to get over that urge or that wave. But it's also important to have the right things in the house and not have the other things in the house. So if you're someone who is really, really trying to get over this and make changes in your life, then make people around you in your household aware of it as well, and that they are not bringing stuff into the house that you're going to be really like testing yourself with. And it being
there's no medals for it, is there? There's no medals for testing yourself. And I actually personally don't believe in this concept of willpower. I think willpower as a concept is a load of rubbish. And there's no medals for having great willpower and having stuff in the shelf that you're not going to eat. Hopefully you'd like to think that in time you can get to a point where you can have this stuff in the house and it genuinely doesn't call you and tempt you. And I think also it's just important to say that sometimes you might be surfing an urge, you might be really listening and tuning into your body, and you might decide that no, still on this occasion I'm going to have a little bit of what it is that I'm really craving, and as long as you sit down and really mindfully enjoy that little bit, then I would say if it's one small step in the overall picture of making change, then there's no problem with it. And I guess that ties in with what you're saying about cutting down slowly. So that's okay. It's if we're kind of mindlessly just ramming it in that it's
that's it. That's what it all comes down to, is it? It's not just about one thing. It's not just about giving out nutrition advice. And this is where like the two of us, our work comes interlinked so nicely, is the fact that it is a mindset as well as an actual nutrition thing.
Yeah.
Because if you're mindlessly putting it in, like I always talk about watching the TV and eating at the same time, because you're just watching something and you're shoveling it in. And by the end of it, if you've got like, say, I always use like a bag of Doritos as an example, because that's probably what I would have. You finish the packet before like the program's finished, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize I'd eaten that much.
And you didn't really enjoy them
about it. Yeah, exactly. It's just an action, isn't it? It's not an actual thing that you're thinking about.
Yeah.
So there is all of that going on, as well as like what nutritionally is better for you, cravings, all the rest of it. It is a mindset thing as well as everything else.
Yeah.
Sure. I knew this subject would become a bit juicy, and I'm sure we could have spoken all day about that, but it's important to just give our viewers a little snippet. So if you've got any more questions on this, then either one of us, you know, if it's about the psychology side of this, if it's about the nutrition side of this, then get in touch with either one of us, and we'll do our best to get back to you on that.
Yeah, lovely. Right, we'll get off then. Lovely.
Thank you very much for joining me today, and I look forward to next time. Take care.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.